Hey everyone, welcome back. Quick thing before we get into today's stories. You might notice something a little different. I've been trying out a new look for the channel, some animation in the background while I narrate. Just something to bring the stories to life a bit more. I'd really love to know what you think. Does it help you get more immersed, or do you prefer the old style? Feel free to drop your thoughts in the comments. Now, on to the first story, a case of ProRevenge that'll make you want to cheer. Let's just say, if you've ever had nightmare neighbors, this one's for you. And after that, we've got a wild ride involving HOA drama and one homeowner who decides they've had enough. Let's get into it.
Me and Karen. A love story. Just kidding. Karen is a total witch. But buckle up, here's my novel. My husband and I are in our late 30s and child-free. Some folks on the child-free subreddit suggested I post this here too, so enjoy the saga. We'd been saving up for almost a decade to move to a tropical paradise. We finally bit the bullet and moved to our dream location. Housing here is super expensive. Think Hawaii prices. So all we could afford was half of a duplex. It's beautiful and right on the water, with space for our boat. Unfortunately, Karen, Billy Bob, her boyfriend, and her 3 gremlins live in the other unit. Setup. Originally, we'd only go for a week here and there, but now we live here full-time. The whole duplex was owned by an older gentleman who rented out both sides. The sides are not equal. One is a 5-bedroom, 3-bathroom, ours, and the other is a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, theirs. We bought the 5-bedroom. Our side includes 90% of the backyard, a gazebo, and about 150 feet of dockage since we're on a corner. The other side has a tiny backyard, a patio, and maybe 15 feet of dockage. The rental leases specify that renters are only entitled to their designated yards. But since there weren't any fences, everyone just shared the yard. After we bought the property, Karen expected to keep using the whole yard. I told her if she asked politely, we'd try to accommodate her. She took that to mean she had open access. The party incident. One day, my husband and I are having drinks in the backyard when a delivery truck shows up to set up a giant blow-up thing in our yard. I ask Karen what the F she thinks she is doing, and she says it is her kid's birthday. Then she has the gall to tell us it's a family and friends only event, so we need to stay inside our house. Not wanting to ruin a kid's party, I told her that after this, she'd have zero access to our yard. Karen shrugged and continued setting up. During the party, a drunk adult wandered into our house. Yeah, you heard that right. I told him Karen's house is the other side, and he said, "Oh, Karen said she owns the whole property and to use whichever bathroom's available." I pointed him to her bathroom. Minutes later, she comes storming into our house screaming about how dare we embarrass her in front of her friends. Said we were selfish and didn't deserve this much space with just the 2 of us. I told her to get the hell out of my house or I'd be calling the cops. Backyard remodel. After the party, we decided enough was enough. We started planning a backyard remodel. Fence, patio upgrade, fire pit, outdoor kitchen, the works. When the contractor showed up, Karen came to investigate. Since the fence would be the last part, I only mentioned the patio. Her face lit up like she was going to enjoy our new setup when the workers started on the fence. Karen came out screaming for them to stop. I told them to keep working and told Karen to butt out. So what did she do? She called the police. I explained everything to the officer. Yes, it's our property, and yes, the landlord, which Karen is not, was informed. The cop gave Karen a stern lecture. I thought her head might explode. She slammed her door so hard it sounded like something cracked. We got our fence. The boat incident. Enter Billy Bob. Trashy, loud, disrespectful Billy Bob. He'd throw cigarette butts and beer cans over the fence for disrespecting his woman. Billy Bob had a 30-foot fishing boat, but only 15 feet of dockage. We rent out our extra dockage month to month. One day, while we were out of town, Billy Bob and Karen posed as us, told one of our renters to leave, and parked their boat there. I only found out when the renters left a nasty review, angry that we went back on a verbal agreement. I was like, What the F? I called the cops. Karen and Billy Bob claimed the boat was on their property. It wasn't. Then said, no one owns the water. Irrelevant. Then called us liars. Billy Bob eventually punched a cop and went to jail. We won a small claims suit for lost rental income. Haven't seen a dime. But I did convince the dock renters to return and gave them a few free months. Final revenge. A couple months later, with the market collapsing, we were trying to figure out what to do with our savings when the landlord who owned the other unit reached out. He needed cash and was sick of managing the property remotely, especially thanks to Karen's constant calls. His only condition? Let the poor single mom finish her lease, which ended in July. We didn't need a mortgage or realtor, so we closed in under 2 weeks. Karen knew ownership changed, but not who bought it, until I knocked on her door. She answered with, "What the F do you want, witch?" I smiled, handed her the landlord info, and sweetly reminded her rent was due, but she could just give it to me. Her face turned ghost white. I told her we'd honor the lease, but after that, she needed to make other plans. We're remodeling for new tenants, by which. Edit. Clarification. We bought the bigger duplex side, duplex OP first. Karen lives in the smaller rental, duplex Karen. Now we own both. Duplex OP is our home. Duplex Karen remains a rental, but we're now the landlords. Update, number 1, about 3 weeks later. Not much change yet. Lease is still active. Rent's been paid on time. We served a 30-day notice and offered to prorate the final month and waive any fees if they move early. Still having loud parties. We had to call the police after the kids threw lit fireworks at our boat. Update number 2. About a month after that, Karen and crew are still there, and now not paying rent. We filed for eviction but can't enforce it yet due to restrictions. Billy Bob got arrested after a huge fight and hasn't been back. Karen's being extra smug. Loud music, trash everywhere, crossing boundaries. We wanted to move our elderly parents in after a remodel, but it's hard right now. They need care, and we're exhausted. Update number 3, a few months later. Life is weird. Karen's still there. My partner moved in with their parents temporarily to help them recover from surgery. Then, Karen's mom, Susan, moved in, and she's an angel. Mortified by Karen's behavior, she's turned the whole household around. The kids are behaving. Karen stomps around like a teenager. Susan and I have drinks in the backyard. We bake every weekend. The holidays were great. We made a big outdoor feast and played games. Even Karen was being pleasant. I offered to waive rent, but Susan insisted on paying. I told her a lower amount and set up a month-to-month lease. Susan wants to move back home and take Karen with her. Karen seems ready for a change too. Honestly, it's peaceful now, so we're in no rush.
Gosh, that Karen really thought she had the upper hand, didn't she? But sometimes, the bigger the ego, the harder the fall. Speaking of power-hungry people who took things way too far, our next story takes us into the world of HOA politics, where one man turned a neighborhood association into his personal kingdom, until someone decided enough was enough.
The HOA president's long goodbye, posting on behalf of a friend who isn't on Reddit. This is for you, Jake. When I moved into my suburban neighborhood, I expected peace and quiet. Instead, I walked into a petty dictatorship run by our HOA president, Todd. Todd was the worst kind of leader, the kind who loved power but hated accountability. He enforced ridiculous rules, like fining people $200 for leaving their trash cans out a minute past 9 a.m., but blatantly ignored the rules when it suited him. His own yard was a mess of unpermitted structures, and his fence was taller than allowed by city ordinances. But Todd's true sin? Using the HOA as his personal piggy bank. At first, I tried reasoning with him. My fence was slightly off color because the approved stain wasn't available, and he fined me $500. I explained, provided receipts, and asked for leniency. Todd smirked, said, "Rules are rules," and walked away. That's when I decided I would take him down. Not with screaming or public arguments, but methodically, legally, and in a way he'd never recover from. Step 1. Become the inside man. Todd's first mistake was underestimating me. I volunteered for the HOA board under the guise of wanting to get involved in the community. I played the part of the eager, naive newbie perfectly. For 2 years I attended every meeting, quietly observing how Todd operated. I learned he controlled the board by bullying other members and burying them in paperwork. He would push through votes when only his allies were present and conveniently lose paperwork submitted by dissenting homeowners. I kept my head down, took detailed notes, and waited. My goal was to outlast his term as president so I could begin making changes. Then I discovered Todd's second mistake. He wasn't just a bully, he was a thief. Step 2. Follow the money. Todd loved to brag about how he kept the HOA's finances in order. But something didn't add up. The annual HOA fees were high, much higher than in similar neighborhoods, but the common areas were falling apart. The pool was closed half the summer due to maintenance issues, and the landscaping looked like it hadn't been touched in months. I started digging. As the HOA treasurer, Todd had access to all the accounts, but he was notoriously cagey about sharing financial details. I asked for the budget during a meeting, and Todd laughed it off, saying, "Don't worry, I've got it under control." I filed a formal request for the financial records, which, under HOA rules, he was required to provide. Weeks went by with no response. That's when I started talking to neighbors. Turns out, I wasn't the only one suspicious. Over a dozen homeowners had requested access to the budget over the years, only to be ignored. One neighbor claimed Todd had used HOA funds to install a new patio at his house, while another swore he had seen Todd's kids at the community pool during its maintenance closure. Armed with these suspicions, I filed a formal complaint with the HOA board, forcing Todd to provide the records. He stalled, but I wasn't backing down. Step 3. Build the case. When Todd finally handed over the financial documents, they were a mess. Invoices were missing, payments were mislabeled, and some expenses were downright bizarre. A $15,000 landscaping fee paid to a company that didn't exist. Thousands spent on administrative costs with no explanation. I cross-referenced the HOA's bank statements with public records and found the smoking gun. Todd was funneling money to his personal accounts. Even better, I discovered Todd had been inflating contractor fees, pocketing the difference, and splitting the profits with his buddy, a shady contractor who handled most of the HOA's maintenance. I compiled everything into a detailed report, complete with spreadsheets, photos, and notarized statements from neighbors who had seen Todd's antics firsthand. Step 4. The coup. I waited for the annual HOA meeting, which was typically a snooze fest attended by only a handful of homeowners. But this time, I made sure people showed up. I spent weeks knocking on doors, explaining what Todd had been up to. I didn't share everything, just enough to get people angry and curious. On the night of the meeting, the room was packed. Todd started the meeting like usual, droning on about how difficult it was to manage the HOA and how much he had sacrificed for the community. That's when I stood up. I calmly asked if he could explain some discrepancies in the budget. Todd laughed nervously and said, "I don't think this is the time or place." I replied, "Actually, Todd, it's the perfect time." I handed out copies of my report to everyone in the room. The mood shifted instantly. People started reading, whispering, and then shouting. Todd tried to regain control, but it was too late. I called for a vote to remove him as president. By the end of the night, Todd was out. Step 5. The final blow. After Todd was removed, we hired an independent auditor to go through the HOA's finances. They confirmed everything. Todd had embezzled over $50,000, mismanaged tens of thousands more, and committed multiple counts of fraud. We reported him to the police and filed a civil lawsuit to recover the stolen funds. But it didn't end there. Todd's shady contractor buddy was also exposed and banned from doing business in the county. Todd had to sell his house to pay restitution and legal fees. His name became a running joke in the neighborhood, and no one would touch him professionally. With Todd gone, we restructured the HOA to prevent another dictator from taking over. We implemented term limits, required multiple board members to approve financial decisions, and created an online portal so all homeowners could access budgets and meeting minutes. The aftermath. Every time I walk past Todd's old house, now owned by a lovely family, I smile. The pool is open, the landscaping is beautiful, and the HOA fees are lower than ever. Todd, meanwhile, moved to a neighboring town, where he reportedly tried to join another HOA board, only to be laughed out of the room when someone Googled his name. Justice wasn't just served, it was plated, garnished, and savored.
It's crazy how different these stories are, but in the end, both show what happens when people abuse power, and what it takes to stand up to them. If you've ever dealt with a Karen or a nightmare HOA, drop your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And if you like this video, a quick like or subscribe goes a long way. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Until next time, take care.